welcome to the Cultivating Calmness Podcast. My name is Kaela Vance, and today I want to talk about gardening. And more specifically, today I'd like to talk about how you can create your own medicinal garden. So I'm in Ohio, and so everything I'm talking about is going to be related to the weather in Ohio and planting time in Ohio. So you can think about this accordingly. If you are listening to this and you are in other parts of the country, you may have to consider many different things. But question for everyone out there listening. If you are considering, a more holistic lifestyle, or you would like to try more natural things, have you ever considered doing it yourself? Have you ever considered planting your own garden, planting some specific herbs or foods that you can use for yourself rather than buy them at the store? Well, that's a little bit about what I wanted to talk about today, because in my house and in my practice, I talk about some of these herbs and ways to use these herbs and how they can benefit you. So not going to go in too in depth on many of these things. A lot of the products or the plants that I'm going to talk about today have many different beneficial properties. So you can use them in many different ways. Most of them you can use the entire plant from root to flower. And so there are ways you can use different pieces and parts of those plants. And if you are watching, I have lots of goodies to show you on my table here, and I'll give a little description of each of these things. But I encourage you to look some of these things up on your own and find out what you want to get out of these plants, how you could get something out of these plants, and you could start that today. So as I said, it's gardening time. In Ohio, it is almost technically spring. I think the radio said we have 8 days till it's officially spring here. And if you are into gardening, or if you're wanting to start, now is about the time, if not earlier, to get your seedlings planted indoors. Some plants, you could probably get them planted outdoors in your garden, and those would be things like your broccolis, your cauliflowers, kale, spinach, lettuce, those cold weather hardy plants, carrots, things that need some of that cold weather to promote the germination of seeds. So some of those things you can get planted, but we're not going to talk about any of those things today. I'm talking about some of the plants that we can use medicinally. So a lot of these you want to get started indoors. Some may do well being planted outdoors or started outdoors right now. You just have to be careful of that frost, because if they start to grow, they may grow, but if it gets too cold and a frost is going to happen, you may have to cover them. So just be aware of that. You could be playing the cover uncover game for weeks, and you have to pay attention to the weather. So I know I've been guilty of not thinking about it, not noticing, not thinking that the weather is going to turn. And then I either have dead plants or I'm rushing around trying to figure out what I can cover my plants with. So go get some of these seeds, and you can get them started indoors. If you are not a seedling person and you'd prefer to buy maybe a starter plant, go for it. I did some of that last year with some new plants that I planted, and I was hoping that some of those would come back, and they did. So that's kind of what inspired this. And if I had a traveling podcast, I could take you outside to my backyard and show you where some of them have started. And that example that I'm thinking of right now is chamomile. So I will get to that in a moment. Before we go any further though, nothing that I'm saying in here is, should be considered medical advice. I am just talking about plants and how they can be useful and how they can be helpful. And I encourage you to do your own research, look up some of these things, find out for yourself, talk to your preferred provider to see if these things would be helpful for you. And in most cases, a lot of these plants can be used in a variety of ways, whether that's fresh or dried or cooked. You can benefit from them in different ways. So things you want to consider before you get started is a big one is your time. how much time is it going to take to take care of these plants, to process them, to then be able to use them? So the biggest thing for me is really processing time. And so when it comes to picking the flowers or picking the different types of plants that you're growing, how much time is it going to take to just get them? And then usually what I do is dry them. And so then it's setting them out or washing them and then drying them out and then putting them in some kind of drying system, which takes time. So I know sometimes that's what holds me back, is just having enough time and being able to devote the time to it. So this year I'm wanting to devote some of that time. So how can I plan accordingly? So just, that's a big thing to consider when you're gardening is, it's great to grow them, but what are you going to do when the product starts growing and you need to start picking and harvesting and doing something with that product? Are you going to have the time to devote to doing it? And do you need help? Sunlight is another important factor. A lot of these things need direct sunlight for most of the day. Some may do well in indoors. You could have like an herb garden. Some may need, partial shade, but a lot of times, a lot of these plants are going to need a lot of sun. So do you have a good place to grow these plants? The length of time it takes to grow. So one of these that I have here, actually a couple of them that I have here, if you plant from seed, you may not see the product for at least 1 or 2 seasons, like 2 years. So that's where you may want to get something that's already started. So you may get something this year. Otherwise, you may have to be patient and you may have to wait until next year or the year after to actually see that growth and to get the benefit from that plant. Those are the big ones. Those are the big ones, really. So let's jump in here. So the plants I want to discuss today, the ones that I have here on my table, are Echinacea, Chamomile, Elderberry, Calendula, Tulsi, otherwise known as holy basil, oregano, and dandelion. So without further ado, let's start with Echinacea. So I have some Echinacea here. It is otherwise known as the purple cone flower. So in here, this mixture that I have in this jar, I haven't done anything with it, but you could use this as tea. You could make a tincture. So a tincture is usually made from some kind of alcohol, usually vodka. You soak the herb in the vodka for anywhere from like 6 weeks or longer, just to be able to pull all the nutrients from it. Some will put it in glycerin, so it's not alcohol based. An alcohol based tincture is going to give you the most highly nutrient dense formula. It's going to give you the most nutrients from the product. So if you're wanting the most nutrients, you may go that way. If you cannot tolerate alcohol, you could use a glycerin, or you could do this in an alcohol tincture, and then you can burn off the alcohol. So that's a whole other, you can look that up as far as how to do that. I haven't had to do that. But you would basically put the alcohol in some kind of container and put it in like boiling water to boil out the alcohol, and then you just have the remaining tincture left. So anyway, this is Echinacea. Purple cone flower is what you may see it called out in the world. And this one is one that if you plant from seed, which I did, I planted mine from seed, and the first year, all I saw were leaves on the ground. It didn't grow up tall. I think the second year, I may have had a few flowers. By the third year, though, I had lots of flowers. So the plants that these came from are, I can't remember now, 4 or 5 years old. So they have grown a lot, and you can also propagate the plant by like splitting them. So I'm not sure, I would have to actually look this up, spring or fall, you can kind of cut the root system and split it so that you have multiple plants. Or if you're done with the plant, you could then use the roots. So this is a plant where you can use the whole plant for different things or all together. The root is generally considered to have more nutrients in it. So you would dig it up, clean it up, and you can use the root, the stem, the leaves, the flower, and the seeds for your healing journey. You can use Echinacea in tea. You can make a tincture. There are lots of things you can use Echinacea for. Obviously, all of these plants are good for the bees. So if you do grow them, giving enough time for the bees to get to them before you cut them off will be good, because we want to promote healing, and we need the bees to pollinate and for our flowers and everything to continue growing. But Echinacea has, again, lots of beneficial properties. It's it's an antioxidant. It has great immune support. It's anti-inflammatory. It may reduce anxiety. There are studies that show that it can help with anxiety. So you can use this in a tea and a tincture. I tend to use things in those ways, teas and tinctures. But you may be able to use them in like baths. So like if you want to soak in a bathtub, you can use these plants either directly in the bath, or you can cook it into a tea. And then you take that tea water, like a pot of water that has had certain herbs soaked in it, and you can pour that into your bathtub. And it will kind of, obviously you're not going to have the whole bathtub filled with that, but it adds to your bath. And your body, your skin is your biggest organ. So it can help absorb, help detox, help support your system as needed. So Echinacea is good for a lot of immune support. A lot of times people use it, especially in winter or when you're getting a cold, to help support it. But do your own research, look into where there are different maybe medications you may be taking where it could be counterintuitive. Some say that it can not be helpful for people who have autoimmune issues. There seems to be a little bit of back and forth on that. Some say it does, some say it doesn't. So do your own research and look into that yourself. So another one that I have a lot of, and I need to get making another tincture, is chamomile. So chamomile actually smells really good, and I haven't opened this in a while. Yeah, even dried and in this glass container, it smells really good. It's part of the, I believe, daisy family. They're little tiny white flowers with yellow centers, and a lot of people connect chamomile with chamomile tea. Yes, and it does really well for sleep and relaxation. So that's where a lot of people might drink tea in the evening to help them, get into a relaxed state and be ready for sleep. It does have that benefit. It also is anti-inflammatory. So, we have a lot of inflammation in our system, and this can help with that inflammation and digestive health, your gut, like gut healing. So I use it a lot for not only the relaxation piece, but the gut healing piece, because what it does is when we think about like having digestive issues or healing your gut, a lot of us have an unhealthy gut, or a gut that leaky gut is what some may call it. And what that is basically that the lining of your gut, if you're watching, it's like your fingers are all separated and there's gaps between your fingers if you're putting your hands together. And we want your fingers to be connected like you're holding your hands together and praying with your fingers interlocked. We don't want there to be any gaps in our gut, so that the food we're eating passes in and out of our gut and into our bloodstream. That can cause a lot of inflammation. The food we eat is meant to stay inside our gut, inside our intestines, inside our stomach, and we don't need it seeping in and out. So chamomile can actually be a good herb to help with that. And then there's lots of other ways that a lot of these herbs, may help. And that's just the way of saying that in the medical world, we cannot officially say one way or the other that it, can help with certain things, but there has been evidence to show that it can help with blood sugar regulation, menstrual pain, heart health, and some other helpful issues that you may be experiencing. But the big ones are gut health and rest and relaxation. The next one I have here is elderberry. So the first thing I'm going to show you is I have 4 elderberry plants growing in my backyard, and Actually, when I planted them, I didn't realize how big they would get. Though, with some research, I have learned that they can be made to stay smaller if you are pruning them regularly, taking care of them, and cutting off the big branches and letting smaller branches continue to grow. And so that's what I will be doing in my backyard versus just letting them grow. So if I had larger property, I might just plant them and let them go, but you may get less from them. So what I did this year from my plants that are now, I think I'm on the 3rd year. So this is another one where if you got one of these from me, this is a cutting from an elderberry plant, if you are watching, and you cut with the certain nodes. So here's a node down here, and that would go in the ground, and there's the node at the top, and that's where your branches are going to go from. But if you planted this today, March, in the middle of March, if you planted this today, you might get elderberries, berries from this in the late summer, early fall. Might. I know when I got mine from a local farmer, and I had 4, so I got 4 plants, and I had a few berries, a few bunches of small berries, I think in the early fall, and that was it. But they did grow really fast. So elderberry bushes grow really fast, but you may not get berries in your first year, but the following year, which yes, this is why I will be on the 3rd year, because the following year, which was my last year, I had lots of berries. And this is what's from that. And again, I need to use this and make some more tinctures. You can make tea. You can eat elderberries, but you cannot eat them raw like you would most other berries, because there is a constituent inside the berry that can be toxic for humans, if you eat them raw. So they have to be cooked or dried in some way before you can eat them. But the flowers are edible, and you can eat those raw, and you can use both parts of the plant. You can use the berries and you can use the flowers for different things. Some people use the flowers for an essence, and so you soak those in water, and maybe something else. I've never made an essence, so I can't speak to how you would use those. But if you use the flowers, you won't get the berries. So you have to think about what you want to do with it, because the berries come from the flowers. So same thing with strawberries. If you see flowers, those turn into the berries. So if you cut the flowers off, you won't get the berries. So I pick them, and then I dry them, and then you can cook them and turn them into elderberry syrup, elderberry tincture. And I already explained how you can use tinctures, how you can make those. So elderberries, good antioxidants. They help with your immune system, more so than a lot of berries like blueberries and goji berries, strawberries, cranberries. They have more antioxidants in those little things than all those other berries do. They may be good for your gut health. They have cancer-fighting properties. They can help with cold and flu season. This is usually when people think about elderberry, is getting elderberry syrup, elderberry lozenges, elderberry tinctures, elderberry gummies. There's all kinds of forms of elderberry out there, and it's usually promoted as a way to help, your immune system. So they're good immune support, and this would be a good one to have for you to grow, and it's a pretty easy thing to grow. So you can find somebody locally that maybe has their own bush, and they can cut you off a little stick, and you can plant it. And you usually need more than one, just so they can cross-pollinate and things of that nature. At least that's as far as my research has shown me. Another one that I want to talk about is calendula. Again, another one that's pretty easy to grow. I started with some seeds that I bought from an organic company, and I plant them kind of all over. They're in the marigold family. And so if you look at them, they can be anywhere from a yellowish, orangish to reddish color. You can use the petals, and I believe the whole flower. You can use it in many different ways. Tinctures, salves are big ones. So you would put this in an oil, cook the oil, or soak it in an oil. You could, cooking it will maybe take some of the nutrients away. So letting it sit for a while in the oil, and then you would add the oil to something else like beeswax and some other constituents to make a type of lotion or salve that you can rub on, different ailments on your body to help. You can use it in tea, you could make a tincture, and calendula is rich in antioxidants, so can help, it helps with free radicals and helps to neutralize the harmful effects of oxidative stress. It is like antispasmodic, meaning it can help with like cramping. So whether that's menstrual cramping or cramping from like digestive issues, this can help with that. So this is a good antiviral, antifungal, helps with wound healing, can help with gut healing. So along with the chamomile, calendula can help with gut healing. Use it in teas, tinctures, all those things. So 𝗖𝗪𝗃 is another one. I got this from a local farmer last year, a starter plant. So this year my intention is to have more of it. And I actually, didn't realize how beneficial it is. So it's in the basil family. I also grow regular basil and I use that in my cooking, and I use that for herb, just a dried herb that I can add to everything. You can also have basil fresh. So 𝗖𝗪𝗃, otherwise known as holy basil, is an adaptogenic herb. What that means is it helps your body to adapt to different stressors, and that can be that's just really helpful. Another adaptogenic herb is ashwagandha. I don't have that in my garden, but this is another good one. So you can use the whole plant. So you can use the leaves, stems, flowers, roots, seeds, and then you can make an oil from it. If you were into essential oils, you can use most of these, likely have an essential oil form. You can use this as an essential oil. It's rich in nutrients such as magnesium, manganese, copper, folate, calcium, iron, and vitamins A, C, and K. So lots of vitamins packed in this little plant, basil, 𝗖𝗪𝗃, or holy basil. So get this one. This one's pretty easy to grow, and the flowers smell amazing. It smells amazing, actually. Different from the cooking basil, excuse me, but it is, it's just very aromatic and it smells really good. So that's another one that would be easy for you to grow. You would get it this year. You could make things from it right away. Oregano, I just have some crushed oregano left, but oregano, it grows in my garden. I planted it one time and it just grows and grows and grows. So I don't know if it's considered invasive. I might consider it invasive, just like peppermint is another one that people consider to be invasive, just meaning that it, for me anyway, in my experience, when I've planted it, every year and so on, it expands and grows and gets in a bigger and bigger area. So I have found it, so I have a box garden, and it is growing outside of the box into the grass. And so in the summer, I will find it in the grass, even though I've removed it from that area in my garden. I dug it up and I sold it. I got rid of it. I did save a little patch and I put it in a pot. So I put it in a pot so it would stay put and it wouldn't hopefully travel everywhere. So this may be a good one to have in a potted garden, but it grows. You just keep cutting it and it'll keep growing, and you can use it for food. You can use it for health. It's a good antioxidant, antibacterial, antimicrobial, antiviral. You can put it in oils, tinctures, food, teas. You can use it in all kinds of ways like that. It can be really beneficial for illness, but you don't want to use it like oil of oregano. So not an essential oil. Oil of oregano would be you take the leaves and you soak it in oil, and then you use that oil, in your diet to help kill bacteria and to kill bad stuff up. But you don't want to use it too much because you need bacteria in your gut. You need good bacteria, but it can kill everything, kind of like an antibiotic, but not quite like an antibiotic. So oregano is another good one. Very easy to grow, very easy to maintain for the most part. And you can just use it in cooking. So if you are Italian and you like Italian seasonings, this is one of the Italian seasonings that people often use. And I want to finish with dandelions. Some of you may already be seeing dandelions. I don't know that I've seen any in my yard yet, so you don't have to plant dandelions. I would recommend, if you're going to use dandelions, as with any of these, do not spray. Do not spray or do not use it or pick them from a yard that you know sprays, such as glyphosate, because that's very dangerous and harmful to your health. So you don't want to go picking dandelions from everybody's yard unless you know for certain that they aren't spraying and there aren't any dangerous chemicals on them or in the root system, so that you know you're getting a healthy product. I know I don't use any in my yard. And so the downside to picking dandelions, if you want the roots. So what I'm holding here is dandelion root. And it can be hard to get out of the ground. The dandelion roots can be so long and you may only get part of the root. And so the bigger the root, the better. That means they've been there longer. So you may have to let them grow. So if you're in my family, it's a mixed bag. We don't want to kill the dandelions, but we, haven't always liked having them around. We're getting used to having them, and I'm trying to pick them more. So you can use the whole plant, the root, the leaves, and the flowers. You can eat the flowers raw. Again, you want to be careful where you're getting them from, but you can eat the flowers raw. You can cook the flowers and eat them. You can use the flowers in tea, whether fresh or dried. These are dried roots. You can use them in teas and tinctures and things like that to help with many different things. It's healthy, helps with healthy digestion, with your liver, with immune support, with inflammation. Usually can be considered helpful with managing blood sugar, with your heart health, and things like managing cholesterol and blood pressure. So lots of benefits from the dandelion plant, which most of us consider a weed, but it is anything but a weed if you want to use it medicinally. Also very high in vitamin C, A, and K, iron, magnesium, what else? There's a few others. Can't think of what the other ones are. And has a little bit of vitamin B, vitamin E, and folate in them as well. So don't kill the weeds. They can be beneficial for you. Many weeds have medicinal value. You just have to look them up. You have to know the difference between what they are as compared to something else, because a lot of plants can look very similar. But this is where research comes in. This is where reaching out to the community to find out if they can be helpful. So that's a lot of information today. These are things that I will be growing in my garden. The dandelions I'm not planting, but they will grow on their own. And you can make it a game and have your kids pick them and turn them into medicine for you and your family. So good luck this year. Tell me, feel free to comment or message me and tell me what you're doing with your plants and how you are taking that adventure and taking those steps to control your own health and to advocate for yourself and just have a little fun. Thank you for joining me today, and I wish you all the best in creating your own medicinal garden.